Video games are bigger, better, and longer than ever before. You'd think everyone would be happy about this, but some are not, and they're making their voices heard, which is already impacting and damaging video games as we know them. Let me explain. Is that going to become my new catchphrase?
What's happening?
Hijacked him. Our nervous systems are now linked.
I played Cyberpunk on my PC for over a month. It was my first playthrough and it took me 120 hours to complete. How, you ask? Quite simply, I played the content of the game that CD Projekt Red put out. I'll release a full review of the game in my next video. If you know my channel, you'll know I've been playing video games for around 35 years. My goodness, has it been that long? I've played every genre, have a wealth of experience under my belt, and I still get excited about upcoming releases. Cyberpunk was announced almost a decade ago, and 8 million people had their copy on day one. 8 million people. And although there is easily 100 hours of content in the game, just 48 hours after its release, the reviews started popping up online. People moaning about how short and incomplete the game was, and how they felt misled by CD Projekt Red. And of course, all of the glitches, but when I started playing, most of those were patched out on my PC. Aside from all the reports of broken gameplay, many of the reviews said the game was too short, but for me, it wasn't. I take my time. I don't rush through the dialogue, I explore the world around me, I find the hidden areas, I build my character up to get the best gear and weapons, I read the pieces of information scattered throughout the world, and I live in the shoes of the character I'm controlling. I want to be Link, or Eivor, or V. I want to see through their eyes, and get as much out of the game as possible. To me, it makes zero sense that anyone would excitedly wait for almost 10 years for a game to come out and then race through it in just a few days. Why would anyone do that? Unless it's your job to review games and you only get a couple of days to complete them in, there is no other reason to race through a game and jeopardize your own enjoyment. I've heard people say they're just too good at games. No, they're not. They're actually really bad at them, and these few but growing group of people are starting to ruin it for the rest of us. As video games have grown in popularity, so have the budgets. Gone are the days of crappy scripts and untrained voiceover artists.
Enough! My ship sails in the morning. I wonder what's for dinner.
Oh boy! I'm so hungry, I could eat an octorok!
Now we get film-style budgets and known actors voicing the main characters. The script writing can be so tight, they rival many blockbuster movies. And it makes sense. When millions of people are playing story-rich games, the writing has to be strong, otherwise people will lose interest and move on to something else. As a writer, I know how long it takes to finish a book or screenplay. But these are short compared to video games, which have to write full stories for each character, keeping the momentum going for 30 plus hours, and write variations and alternate endings to give the player more choice. Of course, bigger budgets mean bigger costs for the consumer. A AAA based game costs around £50 or $70, but if you want the extras like a season pass with future DLC updates, that can cost an extra £20 to £50 or dollars. For releases I'm excited about, I'll pre-order the game and season pass every time, and it's a lot of money, so when I finally get to play that game, I want it to be worth what I've paid. If I can get 1 hour of gameplay for under £1 or $1, then I feel that's a good exchange rate. I'm sure most people think the same, but there are a growing minority who don't. They actually are complaining that video games are too long, even if they've enjoyed playing them, and unfortunately, the studios are beginning to pander to them. In the case of Cyberpunk, they broke up the game into main, side, and gig missions. The problem is, unlike every other game I've played before it, the main story and the side missions are part of the same thing. The side missions are where you build relationships, discover more of the world, and get a sense of what Cyberpunk is all about. By splitting them up, they are fragmented and totally out of order. It's easy to miss something or skip past where you should be because of this, and it can feel disorganized at first. I read an article where they explained that CD Projekt Red did this in response to people complaining that The Witcher 3 was too long, and only a small percentage of people on Steam have ever finished it. Surely a better solution would be to give the player the option to start a new game as it was intended, or another with the broken up missions. Personally, I think it's insane that anyone would say a game is too long. Why do you have to finish it so quickly? Why would you want to? Spend a few weeks or months dipping into it and going back to it when you have the time. Enjoy progressing through the world. If you're racing through a game to just experience the highlights or to see how the story concludes, how is that any different from watching Let's Play videos on YouTube? A gamer is someone who immerses themselves in the world, whether that's a platformer, open world adventure, or even a simulation. I think it was the wrong call for CD Projekt Red, and it would be a mistake for other companies to follow their example. Saying that, I do see the benefit of smaller story-led games. The latest Tomb Raider series ran at around 20 hours per game, and more recently, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order ran at around 25 hours. But knowing their game times are significantly shorter means I, and many others, will wait until the price of the game drops. If I'm sticking to my rule, that would mean £20 to £25 respectively. Jedi was a fantastic experience with a rich storyline, and I enjoyed every second of it, but I was left wanting more. Unfortunately, I'm one of those people who can't replay games. Once the story is done, so am I, regardless of how good the game was. Assassin's Creed Origins is one I would love to play again, but I haven't been able to yet. Maybe in a few years' time I'll have forgotten enough of the story so I can go back, but I worry that the drop in graphics by then might put me off. Knowing this, when I start a game, I'm aware it will take up all of my free time until it's finished. I won't play anything else in between, and I will give myself over to the game. I become the character I play. I look in awe at the landscapes, buildings and landmarks. I want to be fully immersed in the world and experience everything it has to offer. Unlike films, TV or books, we are not watching or reading the action. We are the action. The world and everything in it is all around us. Turn left, turn right, it's all there. Where you go is up to you. What you do, who you speak to, what you say, who you attack, who you ally yourself with. In a video game, you are in control, to a certain degree, of the choices your character makes, because you are that character. A great example of this was Zelda Breath of the Wild. I hated that game in the beginning. I didn't know what was happening, where I was going, I had no clothes on, no weapons, and when I did fashion a sword from a stick, it broke during combat. But the more I played, the more I grew in knowledge and strength, to the point where I could explore and leave the starting area into the massive, beautiful world. Every day in that game was a new adventure, and I felt I was achieving something the further I progressed. On the flip side of that was an open world game I had very little control over. Red Dead Redemption 2 was a 75-hour outing for me, and although the story was predetermined, it never felt restrictive. No matter your choices, it will still lead to the same ultimate end, but there were so many optional side quests to discover on your own. It may largely be a linear game in an open world setting, but what Rockstar did right was make that story as deep and as compelling as they possibly could. The graphics were the best I've seen in a video game, even now, and in some ways, that spoilt me for the games that came after it, as they couldn't quite match the splendour and grandeur of that scenery. They had a story to tell, and they told it well. In 2007, Ubisoft released a title which would take the gaming world by storm, spawn a whole slew of sequels, and even produce a Hollywood movie. Maybe we should forget about the film. I enjoyed the first game, but it did become a little repetitive after a while, although I found the story really compelling. It was the next instalment, Assassin's Creed 2, that really won me over. Ezio was a much more rounded character, and diving into Renaissance Italy with him, discovering famous landmarks and the many fleshed out characters, made me want to never leave. That was the first PlayStation game I achieved 100% completion on, and for anyone who knows that series, catching all of those bloody feathers was a nightmare. But I did it, because I wanted to stay in the world as long as I could. I remember feeling a sense of pride for completing it, but also sadness, as the adventure was finally over. And true to myself, no matter how many times I've tried to go back and play the game, I haven't been able to. Except for this video, of course, when I needed the footage. For me, once it's done, Also, the graphics and controls feel clunky and out of date now, so that makes it difficult for me to go back. There have been many games I've bought thinking I'd like them, but haven't been able to get into them. I'm one of those many people who haven't finished The Witcher 3, but it's not because the game is too long, it's because I didn't enjoy it. On the surface, it seems like the kind of game I would love, but I've tried to get into that game 3 times now, and each time I stop playing. It's just not for me. I also find the older I get, the less time I have to devote to gaming. I've become a filthy casual. I'm a work-from-home writer, which means I dictate when I do things. It can be difficult sometimes to concentrate on work when there's a Steam icon staring at me from my toolbar, especially during lockdowns, so I have to carefully balance my work and play times. The start of a game is usually the most impactful. Character development and action sequences are plentiful before the map fully opens up, and I usually block off a few days to devote to a new game. After that, most games, especially open world, lead into missions and side missions that you can complete in about 30 or so minutes each. This is another reason to not race through a game. Once you've got past that initial opening sequence, however long that lasts, you can then dip in and out for under an hour each time. Cyberpunk took me 120 hours over a 7-week period. It meant when I was feeling frustrated or needed a break from work, I could fire up the game and play to relax for a bit. A couple of missions later, and then I'm back at work. And once I've finished a game completely, I already have a long list of games I've bought waiting to be played. At the moment, I have 2 Switch games I haven't even started yet, and hundreds, and I do mean hundreds, of PC games on Steam. Curse you, humble bundle! So I'm itching to start a new game, obviously, but I know that as soon as I do, I'll be sucked into it, and I've got way too much work on at the moment, on top of making these videos. Everyone is different, and everyone enjoys games differently. Maybe you get a buzz from finishing games before everyone else, and constantly playing a new title every few days. But for many of us, we still enjoy enjoying them. Most people can't afford to be spending £50 or $70 on a new game every week, and others want to obtain every achievement or master the speedruns or find all the hidden areas and special quest lines. The problem we now have is that the reviewers, the people who review games for a living, have to keep up with every new release, and there are so many titles launching every month. That's a really difficult task to undertake. These reviewers don't have the luxury of time to spend weeks exploring the worlds, so when a game like Assassin's Creed Valhalla comes along and ties you into its 100 hours of gameplay with no way to skip to the end, they complain and publicly declare that the game is too long. No, it's too long for you, but not for the rest of us. These people have a platform with the loudest voice, but they don't speak for everyone, and companies shouldn't dilute their games because of them. If they really feel this needs to be addressed, instead of making one rule for all, give us options so we can choose how we want to play. Do we want the full or shorter experience? We are gamers, we are dreamers, and we are the lifelong fans that will keep supporting the companies who produce quality gaming experiences in exchange for our hard-earned cash, as long as they continue to provide what we deem is value for money. We live in a time when there are more studios than ever before developing games of every genre for every person on every platform. I just hope they don't close off those options because a few people have forgotten how to enjoy gaming. These are obviously my thoughts and opinions, but which camp do you fall into? Do you like long, epic games, or do you prefer bite-sized chunks? Let me know in the comments section. Thanks for watching. I'll be back next week with my full deep dive review of Cyberpunk. Until then, stay safe, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.